Hi there, friends. Hi there, fellow Catholics. Hello, fellow parishioners. Hello, fellow Christians. Hello, any person of goodwill. I'm Derek, and what I'm embarking on at this moment and for the next several weeks is a video series that will deal with Christianity, Catholicism in particular, because I am Catholic, and public life, especially this thing that we call politics that is so much before us in the world these days, right? Today is Thursday, October 1st, and so we have just 2 days ago seen the first presidential debate in election 2020, right? And here we are all trying to process that and, give our opinions on it, and maybe I'll give you some opinions on that debate and then on debates going forward, but that's not my main purpose here, right? My main purpose is specifically to kind of clarify how the teachings of Jesus Christ and the teachings of the church are meant to inform us in our public life. Not just in election season, but in everything that we do politically and economically, right? And I know that's a big topic, and I'm not trying to be exhaustive here. Each of these videos may be 5 minutes, right? I want to keep it short. I want to keep it pithy. And mostly, I want to say things that aren't being said by a lot of other people or anybody else for that matter, right? I want to say the things that will help you navigate this month of October leading up to November 3rd, 2020, and then beyond. I want to kind of go through some things about how we move past election 2020, whether our preferred candidate wins or not. How do we move past that in a spirit of Christian charity so that we continue to advance the gospel and we don't just advance party ideologies, right? So that's what I'm doing here. And I hope that you will follow me for, the next several weeks. I'm definitely going to go through the election night, right? And then probably right after the election. So what would that be, like November 5th would probably be the last one. So maybe we've got 6 weeks here that you can watch and follow and learn these things that can play into how you relate to other people, because ultimately Jesus Christ tells us to relate to other people with love and mercy, not because they have an R or a D behind their names, right? And so that's just where I'm going, and I want you to know that, okay? And I want you to follow me. So these videos, of course, are going to be available on YouTube. That may be where you're watching this. They will be available on my website. That's DerekRotty.com. They'll be on my social media pages. If you want to follow me on social media, I'm on Facebook. You can find my author page, Seeking Truth, Goodness, and Beauty. That's the three things all humans really do seek. And that's my author page. Or on Twitter, @DerekRotty, okay? So you can find me on any of those platforms. You can email me through my website if that's something that you might want to do. And just engage, right? And not even so much engage with me, although I love engaging with my followers and people who watch these, but engage with people in your lives, right? I have a website and a podcast that I follow, and it's the Crisis Point, okay? So maybe you're interested in that. The Crisis Point podcast, they start out every episode, they say, where we only discuss politics and religion because, like G.K. Chesterton says, there's nothing else worth discussing, right? And in our culture, in America particularly, we've gotten to this place where people will say all the time, well, we shouldn't discuss politics and religion in public. We shouldn't discuss politics and religion at the dinner table, at the family dinner table, especially the Thanksgiving dinner table. Well, I am of the opinion, like the Crisis Point podcast, that's the most important things to be discussing. Not that we need to argue and lambaste people for their opinions, but that we need to engage in conversation, and ultimately we need to put these things onto the foundation of the church and Jesus Christ, because he's the only foundation, right? And he tells us, I am the way, the truth, and the life, right? So that's what we're doing here. That's what I want to do for the next 6 weeks or so, and make a real difference in your spirit over this period of time. Maybe nobody, not enough people watch this, and goodness knows I'm not going to affect the outcome of the election. That's not what I'm trying to do. But what I want to do is give you the good news, right? The good news about the church's teaching on political life, public life, social teaching, right? And hopefully transform your mind and your spirit so that you are more like Jesus Christ when you go into the world dealing with others, right? Especially those who don't think like you, don't worship like you, right? Because we are called to be in relationship with all of those people and be, sharing the good news with them too, okay? And I'm doing this right here by the baptismal font in our parish church in front of the tabernacle, because this call, right, comes from our baptism. Right? When we are baptized, we are called to be holy. And holiness doesn't happen just by us sitting by ourselves. It happens when we engage in relationship, including political relationship, with others. And it culminates, of course, in our receiving of the Lord, especially in the Eucharist, right? He is the source and summit. Not what I have to say, not the Republican Party, not the Democratic Party. He is the source and summit of our lives, okay? And so I want to do this all in context of the faith, right? The Christian faith that I espouse. I also have my American flag, right? And I have my Vatican flag, because I am fully Catholic, and that is, I think, the most foundational descriptor of who I am. I am Catholic, but I'm also fully American. I am an American citizen. I love this country. I studied constitutional law for 6 years in college, preparing to go get a PhD or a law degree or whatever it was. I ended up not doing any of that. I ended up being called into ministry, but I still love those things. I still love talking about the Constitution and public life, and I love writing about it. I write some articles that hopefully you can find online, right, at Crisis Magazine or at Catholic Exchange or, other places. So, I'm here. I am American. I'm Catholic. I'm trying to be faithful, and that's where all of this is coming from, okay? So, today, right, we are here at October 1st, and I kind of wanted to just place this whole series on a very basic foundation that will guide the rest of our discussions, right? So again, 2 days ago we saw that first presidential debate, and everybody kind of universally agreed it was just a debacle, right? You had one candidate yelling at the other candidate, and you had the other candidate making snarky comments about another candidate, right? It was not a good showing of public political life, right? And why was that? My chief contention on that is that kind of thing happens, yes, when we get a media culture that we have, right? And that was a big part of it. But it's also because we have taken faith out of the conversation. If we had faith in the conversation about politics and public life, either one of those candidates or the moderator could have looked at them and said, look, you need to exercise some Christian virtue. You need to exercise some patience. You need to exercise some charity, right? So I think that's the very first foundational piece, is that we need to work to bring a Christian ethos back into public life, right? There's this thing called the Enlightenment that happened in Europe in the 17th and 18th century that was really kind of terrible for public political life, because the Enlightenment said, you can have your faith, but keep it behind closed doors, right? And Christianity particularly doesn't allow that. We, as Christians, have to be Christians in every part of our lives, right? Public, private, everything. We have to be Christians everywhere and at all times. Otherwise, we're not living up to the gospel of Jesus Christ. So there's that. I think if we bring a Christian ethos back into public life, now that doesn't mean that I'm saying every person has to become Christian. I mean, do I believe that Christianity is true? Absolutely. Do I think that every person should be Christian, particularly Catholic Christian? Yes, I do. But that's not going to stop me from relating to those people, right, if they're not, right? In fact, as a Christian, as a Catholic Christian, I am impelled to relate to them so that I can share the good news with them. That doesn't mean cramming it down their throats. It just means developing a relationship with them so that we can engage in dialogue, right? They have some truthful things, some true things that I can learn from them, too. Even an atheist, right, can help me find truth, goodness, and beauty in some ways. I believe that, right? And, so I'm not saying that everybody has to become Christian, okay? Although I think that would be a pretty good thing. But we can still engage in public life and have a Christian ethos without everybody being Christian. I was talking to a fella who had left the church, right? He used to be Catholic, and he left the church. And he said, I don't believe in God. But I still believe in treating other people as you want to be treated and all that good stuff, right? He's living by the golden rule, which happens to be a Christian thing. So if he believes in that, he believes in some tenet of Christianity, right? So anyway, all that to say, that's where I think we need to start, is reclaiming a spirit of Christian virtue in our lives, in our public lives, okay? And then another thing that I think is really, really important, and I gave a presentation on this a couple weeks back, and I asked the group, I said, what is the kind of most foundational piece of Christian ethos, Christian teaching on public life? I said, what teachings of Jesus are you aware of? And they all came up with that one that's in Matthew chapter 22, right? Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and render unto God what is God's. And that's absolutely true, right? Jesus Christ said that. So we know that it is true that we have obligations to our Lord and to our nation. But that, I don't think, is actually the most foundational piece of Jesus's teaching on public life for us. I said, so let's go back, right? And of course, nobody kind of knew what I was thinking in that moment. So I pointed them. I said, have you ever heard of a beatitude? Blessed are those who mourn. It's present right here in Matthew chapter 5, verse 4. This is the beginning of the Sermon on the Mount, the Beatitudes, right? And the second beatitude that he gives us is, blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Now, what does that mean? We get a lot of kind of wonky teachings about this beatitude, particularly from people who may not quite understand what it's exactly about, okay? They talk about how they were sad when a relative died, or something like that. And yes, there is a sadness that comes from those things, but that's not really what Jesus is talking about in that passage, right? In that Sermon on the Mount. So what is he talking about? Well, the best place that I have ever found to have this explicated for me or for anybody else happened in Pope Benedict's book, Jesus of Nazareth, when he's dealing with the Sermon on the Mount and the Beatitudes. And he reminds us that the mourning that Jesus is talking about refers to a sadness that we have because of the sinfulness that is in the world, okay? That's what Jesus means by the mourning that will be turned into joy. If we are saddened by the things we see going on in the world, then he will conquer ultimately, and that mourning, that sadness that we've had, will be turned into joy. Now, how does this relate to our public and political life, right? Well, as a political person, right, as a citizen, right, I am saddened by a number of things that I see, right? I am saddened by a political culture that devolves into a place where we get that debate that we saw on Tuesday night. And debate is a very, very generous word for that thing, right? I'm saddened by that. I'm saddened that our culture has come to that place. I am saddened by the scourge of abortion, right? Some 60+ million babies have been killed in the womb since 1973, since Roe versus Wade made abortion legal in all 50 states, right? I am saddened by detention centers at the borders, right? Where immigrants are detained, sometimes children detained from, separate from their parents for long periods of time. I am saddened by those things because that's not the way that life and our world is supposed to be, right? I am saddened by the question of the death penalty being a necessary thing, right? And I do believe that the death penalty is in some very small number of cases absolutely necessary and unavoidable. But for the most part, right, no, we don't need to be taking the lives of other citizens, especially because it deprives them of the opportunity for conversion, right? That saddens me that somebody doesn't have the opportunity to turn to the Lord in the final days or final years of their lives, right? So that saddens me. I am saddened by poverty. I am saddened by rampant drug use in our country. I am saddened by all sorts of things, right? So what happens is I watch the news or I listen to my podcast where I get the news, and I'm saddened by these things. I mourn for what is going on in the world, right? And I desire that the good news of Jesus Christ could purvey, could come into all of those situations and inform how we deal with each other, right? But what's that going to take? Number one, it's going to take us being converted first, because we can't go into those situations and minister like Jesus until we are more like Jesus, right? And so it doesn't matter whether you're on one side of the aisle or the other. It doesn't matter whether you have an R behind your name or a D or an I behind your name. It doesn't matter. We all need conversion. We all need to become more like Jesus Christ each and every day. He's the only perfect person, well, and the Blessed Mother, right? But she didn't have original sin like we have. See, we all suffer from the wound of original sin. So that, I think, is another key thing to guide us during this month that is coming up, right? The month of October 2020, leading up to election night, November 3rd, right? Yes, we all need to check out the candidates. We all need to know their positions on policy. We all need to know whether or not they're actually gonna bring a Christian ethic to what they're doing, right? Whether that be, calling names, or whether that be allowing babies to continue to be aborted, right? All of those things we have to consider, and then we do have to go vote according to our consciences, okay? Now, let me say one thing about that. Conscience is not the excuse for doing whatever you want to do or whatever I want to do. Conscience is at the service of the truth. Conscience is at the service of goodness, right? Because conscience is God's voice within us, right? Cardinal Newman said that it is the aboriginal vicar of Christ, right? It's the one who tells us what Jesus wants from us, right? And Jesus doesn't want any child aborted. Jesus doesn't want any child separated from her mother and father. Jesus doesn't want anybody killed on death row. Jesus doesn't want anybody in poverty, right? So form your conscience, right? Don't just say, oh, my conscience tells me, and make that an excuse for whatever it is you want to do, right? But how do you form your conscience? You have to not just read the newspaper, And not just read the Democratic Party platform and the Republican Party platform, although those things do go into it. You need to consult the teachings of Jesus Christ, the teachings of the church, right? Because that's going to help guide our actions. See, the church is all about helping people become holy. The church is all about helping people change from what they were to what God intends them to become, right? So we consult the teachings of Jesus Christ, the scriptures, and the teachings of the church and the catechism, for example, that will inform our conscience. It won't just inform our minds, but it'll inform our conscience of how we ought to vote on November 3rd, okay? There are some other good resources too. There's the Faithful Citizenship document that's by the Council of Catholic Bishops. There's the Catholic Answers has a voter's guide. OSV, our Sunday Visitor, has a voter's guide, right? All of these things are great for forming your consciences in the next 32 days, right? 32 days. Now, look, I'm under no illusion. Perhaps you've already decided who you're going to vote for, and that's that. But that doesn't mean you don't still have an obligation to continue to form your conscience and continue to engage in public life. Because guess what? I'm guessing there is going to be a November 4th, 2020, and a November 5th and 6th and 7th, right? And we're going to turn to 2021, and God willing, we will get out of this COVID pandemic, and we will be able to engage in real civil relationship going forward, right? So what does that mean? That means we have to know how to be good citizens and be good Christians and good people after election 2020, right? Because the world isn't going to end on November 4th. I just about guarantee it, right? Okay, so we've gone through a couple things. We've gone through the things that I think are really foundational, that blessed morning. So keep that attitude throughout this month. And what else can we do for this month? Now, I hope that many of you have been engaging in that 54-day Rosary Novena that started back in August, leading up to mid-October and the election. But I think there are some other things, right? There are some great resources. If you go on the web and you just Google, right, novena for election, right? There'll be a ton of stuff. There's one parish, Our Lady of Lourdes somewhere, I can't exactly remember, that had a great novena prayer that you would pray for 9 days leading up to the election. Another one that I thought of that I thought was just maybe a good thing was a novena to St. Jude. Who is St. Jude? St. Jude is the patron saint of lost causes, right? This election may be a lost cause, right? You don't like the Republican, you don't like the Democrat. Maybe you may even have chosen not to vote, right? And you may say, forget it, I'm not even dealing with it anymore. Okay, so it's a lost cause. So pray to St. Jude. Pray to St. Jude that your heart would be turned. Pray to St. Jude that their hearts would be turned. Pray to St. Jude that our country, that seems like a lost cause at this point, can be turned around, and a place, again, it's not about which party's in control. It's about who controls our hearts. And it's got to be Jesus Christ, okay? So the novena to St. Jude, I think, could be something. Here we are on October 1st, right? The feast of St. Therese, right? I think we can pray to St. Therese. And by the way, the novena to St. Jude ends on October 28th, just 5 days before the election, okay? So there's that. St. Therese, right? St. Therese is the patron saint of the little way. St. Therese was not a politician. St. Therese wasn't even interested in politics. She was interested in growing in holiness and helping others through Christian love, right? We need to pray to St. Therese for that. Another one that I would pray for, October 13th, is the 103rd anniversary of the final miracle, the final apparition of Our Lady at Fatima. I have a great devotion to Our Lady of Fatima, whose primary message, yes, she called for the rosary, but the rosary was all ordered to conversion, converting our hearts, right? So Our Lady of Fatima, St. Therese, right? Invoke all these saints in prayer throughout this month, okay? So that's what I can recommend, and that's what I hope you'll do. I know I've gone a little bit long because I'm passionate about these things, and I want you to understand them. I also want you to interact with me. I want you to send me an email. I want you to go visit my website or send me a Facebook message, right, to let me know that you're watching this. And please share these videos with others, right? Because I don't know everybody, right? I only have a couple hundred friends on Facebook or a couple hundred followers or whatever it is. But if you spread it, and I spread it, and we all spread it, we'll bring more of this Christian ethos into public life, okay? And the last thing that I'd like to ask, if you don't mind, if you'd humor me for a moment, right? I am the author of a book. It's called A Life of Conversion by Our Sunday Visitor Press. And today, October 1st, is the 1-year anniversary of its publication. I am so grateful to have been able to write this book, and I hope that you might see that conversion is the essential thing for Christian life, for public life, and how we can further what we're trying to do in that. Go get a copy of the book, right? Please, if you get it from Amazon, please leave a review on Amazon. Please let me know how it impacts you. It's all about Lectio Divina and how we could read and pray the Bible for conversion, for ongoing conversion, lifelong conversion. So with that, I'm going to sign off for this week. I will look forward to seeing, to being here with you next week and hearing from you in the meantime. God bless you.